Come and join me to paint these beautiful poppies using the negative painting technique. Hi everybody, Kat here. Welcome to my channel. Today we're going to be doing a negative painting technique that is a little more simple than my last negative painting video, which I see that quite a few people enjoyed. So I hope you enjoyed this one too. So for this one, we're going to do a much more simple design, and I chose poppies since we're at the beginning of November. I thought it would be nice to choose poppies, and I'm going to quickly show you how to draw one in case you don't know how. I just chose a roll of tape that I like the size of, and I'm just going to draw around that. That's the size I would like my poppies to be. And then I find the center, and I do a figure 8, make sure that the middle touches that center point. And then you're going to continue your figure 8 and come up this way. So it doesn't matter if it's not perfect. Don't fret, because mine is imperfect and I quite like the shape of it. So then I'm going to come down and do it again. And if they overlap, that's okay. Gonna come around that line and there. So you don't need to draw this center in, but just to give you visually, to give you an idea of what it's going to look like, you'll cut out your circle and then you will cut out these areas here. So that's why it's okay if it overlapped. So it's going to look like the poppy that we wear on our lapels in November for Remembrance Day. So today I chose to, you can do your poppies in any color. They come in many colors. I chose to do mine in yellow, orange, and red. So the first layer, the whole sheet is going to be yellow. Now I chose a nice warm yellow. It's called Indian yellow. And you don't have to do an even wash. In fact, if you do, if your paper looks a little more mottled, then you end up with a nicer look, I think. So I'm going to spray my paper very easily. If you don't have spray, you just wet it with your brush. And I'm just going to drop in my paint. This is my cotton bee paper. So I'm just going to drop this in. I don't want this layer to be too dark, because after we're finished, the very last step of our painting is going to be to paint details on these poppies. So as you can see, this is pretty loose, and it always dries, it always dries lighter. And I don't care that there's these streaks in it. I just want to add some darker colors here and there. I just want this layer to be interesting, because with our other layers we're going to have a little less freedom. Okay, so I'm going to pop in some water droplets, comme ça. So it's going to make blooms, which I want this time. Sometimes we avoid them like the plague, but I want them this time. You could use salt. I am not using salt for this video simply because I won't have time for it to dry. I'm going to just pop in some water blossoms there. I don't like that this looks like a line, so I'm just going to come in and add a little paint. Okay. See, we're getting some interesting stuff going on here. And I'm going to let this layer dry and we will move on to the next step. Okay, I'm back. We're all dry now. So my next step is to decide where I would like my yellow poppies to be. So I'm just going to decide based on my design and where I feel like putting my yellow flowers. eventually we're going to end up with red poppies. I want to end up with enough red poppies that you can see them quite well. No. Okay. I'll fast forward through this, folks. You won't have to endure this. So now the next step will be to mix a nice orange. If you already have a nice orange, you can use that. My set, the orange is a little bit, it's kind of artificial looking, if you know it, like almost neon sometimes. So I'm going to take that nice warm yellow, and I have green somehow on my brush. That's what you get for not washing your brush too well. Okay, I'm going to take more of that because we have to cover most of this paper again. So a bit more yellow. And then I'm going to come down and I'm going to choose today a color in my palette called Scarlet Lake, and it's PR123 in case you don't have the same name color as I have. Okay, so Scarlet Lake, where is Scarlet Lake here? 1, 2, 3, 4. It's 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. No, it's 5. Whoopsie. It's this one with the big hole in it. Okay, so I'm going to come in here and mix a lovely orange. Look at that. Isn't that nice? So nice when you mix your own colors. So we want to make sure we have enough of this mixed up because we're going to be painting a fair portion of our paper. The only part we're not going to paint orange is where the yellow poppies are. So let's start with this. See, whoops, I did it again. This is the yellow I want. This is a nice warm yellow, and this is a cool yellow. And the way you can see that is because you can see the bluey green in the lemon yellow. And this one, it leans towards the red. So that's how you know it's warmer. So since we have a large place to cover, I'm going to use my bigger brush for this and use my smaller brush for the details. So I'm going to go around my pencil lines. Like so. And I'm going to wet the paper around it and come around like that. And I'm going to add some orange into it. And once again, I have to go around here for detail. I'm going to turn my work so that you can see and I can get at it easier. And I'm going to go right in to the corner here, into the between the two petals. And we're just going to go around. Now the secret is, this is why it's important, I think, to use cotton paper for this, because your paper will stay more uniformly damp than the cheaper paper. Okay, so I'm going around. I'm just dampening the dry part of the paper where I'm going to work next. And then I'm going to go in with my deeper color. And this is a great, this negative painting technique, this one in particular, is a great way to practice your detail skills and using the points of your brush. And right now, I'm going to go in here with my big brush. And while this area is still wet, this is the hardest part because this is the biggest part for you to cover. And it's okay if it's a little bit streaky, but you don't want streaks. You want your paper, it's okay if it looks uneven, but you don't want streaks because they're just not that nice to look at. So while this is damp, I'm going to take my brush and load it with water, and I'm not dabbing it off. I'm just touching my glass jar with it, and I'm going to put some water droplets because I want to create a bit of interest in that orange background. If I had time for salt, I would use salt. But because this is a tutorial, and salt, it doesn't really work if you don't air dry it. If you do it with a hair dryer, it just you don't get the same effects. So I don't want to. I'm just wetting this over here so we don't have any dry lines. So I don't want to use the salt just for that sake. I don't want to have to wait a whole day to paint the rest of this painting. Okay, so I'm going to make sure this is nice and wet over here. Don't want anything to get dry. I'm going to go in with I'm going to have to make some more orange. Now, because we're going in making it the second time, it may differ from the first time. That's just what happens. I think that's good. So I'm going to add a bit more water to my brush. And I'm going to come back up here and work around here. Now I'm being a little carefree here and going in with my big brush to do the small areas, but it's not the easiest thing. I like to use my small brush for the smaller areas, just so they look cleaner. The lines are cleaner. Okay, a bit more water on my brush. I am going to make more paint. I'm going to come down here so that this doesn't get all dried out. So you have to kind of go back and forth when you're doing this kind of negative painting because you have a lot of ground to cover. Now here I want to have some of those watermarks too, so I'm going to pop them in. And if you don't want them as even, you could just use a different brush, or I'm just, for time's sake, I'm just sticking with the same brush. Okay, so I'm going to come in and it's okay if you don't have to do, like in my video about doing an even background wash, you don't have to do this evenly. You can if you want, but you don't have to, because my goal right now is to make like the yellow layer, the orange layer look a little bit mottled, and then we're going to let this dry, and I'll be right back. Okay, I'm back. It's nice and dry. Now the next step is to decide where I want my orange flowers to be. So I am going to try to layer them a little bit. So I think I'm going to put one here. Oh, I have 2 layers of paper here. Hang on. So I think I'm going to put an orange one under this yellow one. And slightly off the paper, just to give it a bit of interest. Now I'm going to want some red poppies in here, so I don't want to cover all of my space. Like I want a couple of full red poppies, so I want to make sure when I put my orange ones in that I leave room for my red, because these are layers of poppies. That's what this particular type of negative painting, that's what it does. You practice layering, and it teaches you about depth, and it helps you with your brush strokes, and I find it a really fun way of, it's very calming to do this. Some people might find this tedious, but I think, you know what, depending on the mood you're in, you might find this quite relaxing, because you can lose yourself in thought. Well, it doesn't take a ton of concentration to do this. So now the next step is to choose the red you would like. So you're going to now paint around your orange flowers that you just drew, and you're going to paint around the yellow ones. So it you're going to have a little bit less space to cover. So you don't have to work quite as quickly as you did. So I think I'm trying to see what you can see if I start up here. Yeah, I think I'll start up here and then I'll come around and work my way down. So again, I'm going to use one brush for detail and I'm going to use the other one for blending. So I'm going to take my Scarlet Lake, it's called, and I'm going to go in with pretty straight Scarlet Lake. I have to clean my brush a little better. Okay, so going in with my small. So I'm going to come around this petal and the orange ones. Okay. And it's okay if it fades off into the corners, but you do want this color to be fairly deep because these are going to be your your red poppies. So I'm going to work my way, or like I'm going to try to cover the area evenly so that I don't have any dry lines. Because then you get streaking. If something dries before where you're going to continue, you get streaks. So, but if you can continue, if you work quickly enough, and everything will blend quite nicely. And this is cotton paper, and this is the other reason why for something like this cotton paper works beautifully, because it will stay wet a little longer. Turn my work again, and now I'm going to work on this side. So we work our way, like these lines are still wet. They're still wet here, and I'm going to make sure that they stay wet by doing that. Except when you do that, folks, don't go over your other poppies. You got to paint around them. Don't do what I just did. So because watercolor is transparent, when this dries, it is a fairly thick layer though. If I was doing many layers, which I'll show you a painting I did that has many layers, you can see the under layers. You would do these thinner and you can see all the textures from beneath the top layer. So you would see the textures from the yellow layer on your orange layer and from your orange layer onto your red layer. So I did a little bit of research and discovered that the poppies, they say that roses have meaning and different color roses have different meanings, and so it's the same with the poppies. So a yellow poppy represents wealth and success and optimism, so positive thinking. And the orange poppy represents health and regeneration, and the red poppy represents remembrance. And some people have already started doing Christmas things, and I think it's to me it's too early. Not everybody celebrates Christmas, and also it's just too early. You know, we have this wonderful Remembrance Day. I'm going to paint a few poppy paintings in the next few days. My next few tutorials will be poppies. One is going to be a nice loose poppy painting. We'll cover loose painting, I think, for the first time. And then I would like to do a field of poppies, maybe my loose one will be the field, and maybe I'll do a more detailed poppy. I'll do a single detailed poppy. So I just keep wetting. I go ahead of myself, I wet, and then it'll prevent some streaks from appearing. So this is drawing kind of funky over here, so I'm going to add some water. I want to have some fun droplets. Okay, we're back. It's dry. I just wanted to show you a couple that I did. This is the first one I did. This was in 2020. This was my first attempt at negative painting, and I quite liked how this turned out. So I was just, you know, I was new at it. I'm still not an old pro at it, but some people are. It's amazing what they can do with negative painting. I encourage you to just go look at the Facebook page by Linda Kemp. It's called Negative Painting Addicted, and it is unbelievable. Okay, and then I did that one, which I thought turned out kind of cool. That would look really cool on a wall in a kid's room or an adult that likes stuff like this. But they were done on cotton paper. I think you need cotton paper to achieve those looks. So the next step now is to decide where you want your your red poppies. And I wanted a lot of red poppies, so I'm going to put a full one right here. Okay, I think that's enough. So now I'm going to choose a color to paint the background in. So what I've decided to do is I'm going to take my purple. It's called dioxazine purple in a lot of sets, this one. So I'm going to take my purple and I'm going to mix it in with the red that I've been using for my poppies. So that would be the Scarlet Lake. I would like to get a dark maroony kind of color. The Scarlet Lake and the purple, I quite like that. So we're going to see how this moves along. So I'm going to start over here because I'm right-handed and I don't want to stick my hand in anything. And we're going to come around. Now you have a lot more detail work to do here because the spaces between all the flowers are much smaller than they were before. Turn my work. So with this very dark color, this is a good time to either cover up all your mistakes or make new ones. Which is kind of what I think might happen to me because I've been having a day. So what we have to do is going around the flowers, the ones you want to be red, and they will appear suddenly. That's what negative painting is. And you're going to go around the yellow and the orange as well. So you have a lot less space, like I said. In some ways, this part is easier because you have less, you don't have to hurry as much because you don't have to worry about your lines drying out before you can paint them and making streaks. So as you can see, you can see some of that red layer under there, which I quite like. And that's what layering is about with watercolor. You can see, so the colors you put underneath are extremely important, even though you may not think they are. So before it dries, I'm going to put some clear water marks in it because I'm creating the blooms this time. I want them there. Usually we don't want them there. Now this is a really small area, so I'm going to get my even smaller brush to do this part. Dry this completely and we'll get on to the fun details. Okay, so I just wanted to show you what I was going to do to show even more layers, like underneath this purpley red that that I made. You can still see the red and orangey layers that we laid down earlier. And so to brighten that up, I'm just going to use, I have some stencils that have some interesting texture to it. These are, in particular, these are trees, but inside the stencils, I like these little squigglies, so I'm going to use some of them just to create a little bit of interest in the painting. So I'm just going to, this is a brush that, if you had a shorter, sturdier one, I would say use that. Dry off your stencil and do it again. Try not to use all the same ones at the beside each other, so it doesn't look too much of a pattern. You know, so this is going to just give it some texture and some light. I just like doing this kind of thing. So you could use an old toothbrush if you go gently. Even cotton paper has its limits, so you have to be kind to your paper. Okay, stuff like that, just to give it a teeny bit of light. So I'll continue that later. I'll show you the finished painting later, but for now we're going to get on to detailing these flowers. So the first thing you have to remember is the flowers on the bottom layer are underneath the orange, and then the orange are underneath the yellow. So for example, this red one is underneath that yellow flower, so it's going to create a shadow. And I think we already kind of have one started here, but I'm going to go in with my alizarin crimson. It's a nice cool, it's in the red zone, but it's not actually red. I find it pinkier. I find it's hard to find a true red in in watercolor. So I mix it with Scarlet Lake, which we've already been using, and the alizarin crimson. So anything pinky red that you have will work. It's nice and cool. These are warm colors, so we're going to use some cool colors to make some shadows. So we're going to go underneath this yellow petal. Rinse our brush and soften that out so that it doesn't look too, I went in a bit too much there. And poppies kind of on the ends, they round down, you know, the ones we wear on our lapel. So you can drag some of that towards the edges too. I think I'm going to go into with our warm yellow, and I'm going to go in with our cool pink, pinky red, and then add the warm red just to cool it off a little bit. We're going in with that alizarin crimson, and that's going to be our shadow. So this orange flower is under this yellow one. Okay, so you can do that, and then fade it off. Soften it. Once again. Now I can't work on this one because it's wet, so I'm going to come over here. It's not wet over here. So we're going to come under that petal. Give it a nice shadow. Soften it out. Under here it's still wet, I can't touch it. So I'm going to come over here, and I'm just going to continue to add shadows underneath the flowers that are casting the shadow. I'm sorry, I have to do a voiceover now because this is the same microphone. I know it doesn't sound the same, but it is the same one. Anyway, long story short, let's just continue with this painting. Today is just not my day. So now we're going to put the centers in the poppies. So I chose a black and a green, and I mixed them. And I'm just doing a squiggly kind of shape with my brush. I don't want it to look too, you know, thick or anything. And I'm just finding the centers of the flowers, that's all. So here I'm adding a little bit of darker orange to shape the petals. And I'm adding a few stripes, you know, like there's little tiny lines in a petal. And so I'm just adding that to add some definition and some depth to the orange ones. And then I will continue to do that with the red ones. There you see I'm putting those lines in from the center out. So it gives the impression that the center is inward. It's rounded down into the center. I hope that makes sense. I'm doing the same with the yellow. Now I wasn't too pleased with the yellow ones, so I added some Royal Talons gouache to them, and I just added a couple, like light and dark, to add some definition and make the petals have better shapes to them. I really hope you liked this, guys. If you did, please give me a like and subscribe to my channel. And also leave me some comments. I just love getting those too. Happy watercoloring. Bye-bye.